Hello and welcome again. This is the second video of generating random numbers in Java. So this is the second way to generate random numbers. And for this way, it's not going to be a method, it's going to be through objects. So we're going to have to use the class random of Java here to do the generation of pseudorandom numbers. So the first thing you want to do to generate, in this case, pseudorandom numbers or booleans, will be to declare first an object of that class, of the class random. So basically what that's going to do is going to create that object, and through that object we're going to get the random things that we want to generate. So the first thing we have to do is, of course, declare what the object is. So the way you do it is like this. You say random with capital R. You put the name of the object here, whatever name you decide for your variable, for your object. Here you can do whatever you want as long as it follows the requirements of the Java language with respect to naming your variables. And then you say equal new, and then again the same thing, capital R random parenthesis semicolon. So that will declare or will create an object of the class random. So once you do that, then with that object you will be able to produce the random things. So for example, if I have something like this, the green code there, this one here is a declaration in Java. So I will declare random, and this is the name of my object here. So I can just name it like that, my random. And it's exactly the same as before, new random parenthesis semicolon. Now again, here you can put whatever you want, whatever name you want. Now this thing here, this assignment here, is not going to give you any random number. What it's going to do is going to create the object for which you can do some random things there. So imagine that you have something like this. So you create an object of the class. So think about it as a box. At this moment, it's just the object. So imagine that this is in memory and the object is there. This object can produce several things. Actually, it can produce random integers. It also produces long. The type of variable that you can produce. It also produces floats, and it also produces booleans, random booleans, and produces Gaussian and bytes too. So you can produce bytes also here with these random things. So that object will be able to produce for you all those things. I mentioned in the previous video that you can also produce charts with this, not directly. You will have to first produce a random integer, and with that you'll produce a chart with the corresponding number. But directly you can do these kinds of things and a lot more. You can also produce streams with this, which is a new feature of Java. And so it has a lot of actually methods that you can use to produce random things. So let's see, for example, how this works with integers. So once I create my object random, the only thing I have to do now is tell this object to create random things for me. So basically, the object just exists in memory, and I'm going to tell it to create things for me. So how are you going to create, for example, let's talk about integers. So this part here. So let's create integers here with this random. So what you're gonna do is in Java, you're gonna write down something like this. You're gonna say my random, whatever the name of your variable was. So in this case, mine is my random. And if I want to create an integer, what I do is just dot, and I say next. Let's put next here. Next int with capital I, and then parenthesis semicolon. So that will generate a random integer. So this one generates a random. This whole thing here, this will produce in Java a pseudorandom. Whenever I say random from now on, it will mean pseudorandom. So this is a random integer. Now, this is in the range of what integers are. So you could produce any integer from the range of integers in the Java language. if you just leave it like that. Now, if you want this to have a range, what you can do is, let's say for example, you want your random integers, so integers, let's say between 0 inclusive in this case. So we'll say inclusive and any other, and then any other integer, for example a integer, and this is going to be exclusive. So let's say I want to generate integer between 0 and a, when a here is an integer. So the only thing I have to do here is basically what I need to do is just in this line of code that I have here, I should need to put an a there. So a basic this, and if I put an integer here and inside this parenthesis, it will mean that whatever the random integer that is going to be generated here is going to be between 0 and a exclusive a. So for example, if I say something like this, if I say my random, let me write that down. I say my random that next int, and I say for example 10, and I put it there inside the parenthesis, what that's gonna do is gonna create a random integer between 0 and 9, because it's between 0 and 10 exclusive of 10. So that's gonna generate a random number between 0 and 10 in that case. So what I'm gonna do now is let's go to the Eclipse application and let me show you how that works. So I'm here in the Eclipse application, and as you can see there, I have the declaration of my object, which I call new random, and remember you can choose whatever name you want. And I also have the way to generate the integer, the random integer, which is this one right here. So it's gonna be my random that next int, and it's gonna give me an integer in the range of integers there. So the only thing I'm doing here is I'm printing out that random integer. If I were to use it, of course, later in the program, I'll have to assign it to a variable. So, but in this case, because I want to print it out, then I just go ahead and run this program. So if I save this and I run it, what you can see there is once I run it, then I'll have a random integer. And of course, every time you run this, so it's gonna give you another number. So something like that. Is it possible that you get a negative number as well here because it's in the range of integers? Now, as I also mentioned in the video previously, that parenthesis that you see there in the middle, this one here, you can put a number there, and it's going to create a random integer between 0 and that number that you put in there exclusive. So when I said at the videos, I put a 10 there, then what's going to happen here is going to create a random integer between 0 and 9, including 9. So if I run it, then let's run this again. So that will give me, okay, so it gave me 9 there in that case. And then if I run it again, let's run this again. Let's say it gives me 9. Well, it's a coincidence, but let's try to get another number there, 8. So you see there that is generating numbers between 0 and 10 exclusive. So that's basically what it is for integers in this case. So just change the number here, whatever you want to create, whatever range you want. Now, if you want a different range, for example, you want numbers between 5 and 10, what you do is you do this. You keep that 10 there, and if you want numbers between 5 and 10, what you do is you add a 5 there if you want to do between 5 and 10. So let me save it. And so that line of code there will produce, of course, for me, a random number between 5, inclusive of 5, and 10, exclusive of 10. So let me run it there. And so that gives me 9. So that's gonna work like that. So that's gonna give me 5 plus whatever this number is. So basically, what I'm saying is it's gonna give you a number between 5 and 15 exclusive, because this number could be anything between 0 and 9, and so it will go all the way from 0 to 9 plus 5. That would be a range between 5 inclusive and 15 exclusive in that case. So let me run that again. Let me see if I can produce another number that is bigger. That's okay. That's 14 there. So I can produce, that's the maximum I can actually produce with that line of code. And you can produce other range too. So you just change the numbers here. This is your maximum. Here the maximum will be this guy plus whatever you put in here. That will be the maximum. And the minimum would be this number that you put in there. So that's basically how you generate random integers with this object. So let me go back to the other part of the video. So as you saw in the Eclipse application, so basically what you can do is generate random integers between any ranges. And so remember the one that you're gonna use there is next int with capital I. So you put that, whatever the name of your object is, that next int. Now for longs is almost exactly the same, as you just do next long with capital L. So exactly the same, almost exactly the same as you did with the int, and you can actually figure out what the next one is, right? So next float with capital F. And to generate booleans, then you say next boolean with capital B. The only one that is a little bit different is bytes, and what you're gonna see there is next bytes will actually give you a byte array of pseudo-random generated bytes. So you have to provide the name of your array. So you can say something like this. You can say, for example, to generate bytes, you say next bytes, and then inside that parenthesis, you're gonna write down the name of your array to generate the byte array. So that's basically how the my random works. Now I'm gonna talk about a little bit of another way to produce pseudo-random numbers, also with the random class, the random Java class, which is actually new in the new Java, the Java 8, which is streams. Is a little bit more complicated to write down, not that much, but it's very useful if you want to create a list or a sequence of random things, just writing one piece of code without having to go through a for loop. So if, for example, if I want to create a list of pseudo-random integers, I'll have to put this in a for loop, similar with a long in a for loop, and so on and so forth. There's a new way to do that, and you don't need to do a for loop, but you need to write down something else. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go back to the Eclipse application, show you a little bit how this other ones work, which is basically almost exactly the same as this one works. And let's look at a little bit about this next bytes and see how that works, and also later how to create that random sequence of things using not a for loop, but basically something that is already embedded in the Java 8, the new update. So I'll go back to Eclipse and I will run through all of these things here so you see how they work. Next long, next float, next boolean, and so on and so forth. And then we'll move on to the other part, which is streams, doing this with the this object that we created, we call myRandom. So I'll see you in the Eclipse application. So I'm back here in the Eclipse application, and as you can see, I had the same example as before. One thing I forgot to mention is that when you want to use the random objects here, what you need to do is you need to import the Java utility or the package here, this one right here. You have to import that to be able to use it. So you just have to add that extra little bit of code there so you can use the random number generators using the random objects. So as I said, I just gonna do a little bit of a demonstration here about the other one. So it's not gonna take a very long actually, because it's just basically change next into whatever I want to generate. So let me get rid of all of this here. And so instead of saying next int, let's say I have next long. So capital N L there, next long, parenthesis, oops, let me go back here, next long. And if I run it there, save it, it's gonna give me a pseudo-random long in that case. So let's run it here and see what happens. And there's a long of type long. And if I run it again, then you're gonna see that I get another a variable of type long. Similar is gonna happen with float. So just change this long here into a float. So let me type that float there. and just save it and run it, and then you're gonna get a float in that case. So let me run it here. That's a float. And if you run it again, of course, then it's gonna give you whatever the pseudorandom number is. So it's fairly simple. Actually, it's not that complicated. Boolean is also another thing that you might want to generate sometimes. A Boolean here. So let's just save it there, and then let's do the same thing again. So it's gonna give me true or false. True or false is a sequence of this true again there. Let's see if we can get a false in that case. Let's see, yes, a false. Okay. So that's it. That's basically what the other ones are. The one that I mentioned that is a little bit different from the other ones is the next bytes, because in that case, what you need to do is you need to provide an array where the object is gonna put your bytes. So basically what I'm saying is this. It's not enough that you put here, change this into bytes. So let me write down bytes in that case, bytes. You see there the compiler is, the Eclipse is complaining there that it's because they're missing something. So basically what I have to do here is I need to put something in there, right? So basically, because I want to generate a byte array, so I have to define it first. So let me write down that piece of code there. So you'll have to be patient with me here because I am very slow at typing. So I'm gonna say byte, and because it's gonna be an array, remember what you need to do is you put a open and close brackets, all right, and then you give the name of your array, whatever you want to your byte array to be. So I'm just gonna call it, for example, my list, and I'm gonna say equal, and then that's my list. There is the name of the variable. You can use whatever you want in there, whatever you want to call your byte array. And I'm gonna say the same thing. I'm gonna say new byte, and the bracket there that you're gonna see is gonna actually what it's gonna do there inside that bracket. What I need is the length of that array. So with as many numbers as you want to generate for that byte array. So for example, let's say I want to generate, in this example, let's say for example 12 in that case. Now I have to take this out from here, so I'm gonna take it out from there because I want to generate the byte array. I'm gonna take it out there, and I'm gonna say my random dot next bytes, and that's gonna generate a byte array and put it in whatever the variable I have in here. So I'm gonna put it in my list. So let me say that. So I'm gonna put it there in my list. Right there. Let's put this on my column over there. So that's it. It's generated basically. So that line that you see there, I just above with the byte my list is I'm just declaring my byte array. The line below it, which is my random dot next bytes my list. So the object random what's gonna do is once I call the next bytes method is gonna put a random sequence of 12 bytes in that array that I call my list, because I'm saying I'm generating 12. And that's basically is created. Now if I want to actually print it out and see what is in it, I'm gonna do this, and you're gonna see that I'm gonna see something a little bit weird there. So my list, I can run this program, but once I run it here, so let's see what that does. When I run it, you see that over there, that's not a byte array. That's the let's call the address of the byte array. That's how that's represented in memory. That's not the byte array. That's just the name of the array. If you actually want to see the contents of that array, and that's going to happen every time. Every time you create a byte array or an array, you want to display the elements of that array. If you just say print out, it's just going to give you the address of that array. So to do that, what you need to do is you need to put this line of code that is right here. So arrays that to a string. Okay. And that's what's gonna do is it's gonna give me the list of bytes that I have over there. And you see that I have to import
So Eclipse did it for me very nicely. Imported the Java utility arrays for me over there. You see up there. So I needed to do that to be able to see that byte array. Otherwise, if I just say system that out that print line and just the name of the array, is gonna print the address of that array in memory, not actually the array itself. So if I run this program, you will be able actually to see that array there. So that's the byte array that you see there. So that's the only basically main difference that we had here with the byte array. The other ones, next int, next long, next float, next boolean, they are pretty straightforward. You just put that next whatever you want to generate, parentheses, and you're done. The only one that is a little bit different is this one, next byte. Is a little bit more code, but it's not that difficult. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna go back to writing, but just remember that when you want to do random, you need to import java.utilities.random to be able to use the random objects for your generation. So I'll see you in a little bit.